The alarm screamed through every corridor of Dawn's Edge colony. Governor Hyunwoo pressed his 4 blue-scaled hands against the observation window and stared at the 6 massive warships that surrounded his home. They hung in space like predators circling wounded prey. His scaled skin rippled with fear as he watched the ships position themselves around the moon. 50,000 colonists lived on this moon called Taeyang 7. They came here to mine precious minerals from the deep caves. Families built homes here. Children went to school here. Nobody expected war. The Valoran Union promised peace across all 7 member species. For decades, peace held strong, but peace meant nothing to the Ravagers. The Ravager fleet commander sent a message that played on every screen in the colony. A massive reptilian face filled the displays. His voice rumbled like grinding rocks. The ultimatum was simple and cruel. Surrender in 24 hours or die. Every man, woman, and child would be sold into slavery or killed for sport. The Ravagers did not make empty threats. Dozens of colonies across the sector had learned this terrible truth. Security Chief Dae-hyun stood beside the governor. His compound eyes could see multiple angles at once, a gift of his insectoid species. He had fought in 3 wars before retiring to this peaceful colony. Now war found him again. His mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the tactical display. 6 warships against their small defense grid meant certain death. The colony had basic shields designed to protect against asteroids and space debris. Their automated defense turrets were meant to scare off pirates, not fight a full military fleet. Dae-hyun ran the calculations 3 times. Each time the answer was the same. They could hold out for maybe 6 hours once the bombardment started. Then the shields would fail. Then the killing would begin. Governor Hyunwoo sent distress calls to every Valoran Union outpost within range. The responses came back slowly. Help was coming, but the nearest military fleet was 3 weeks away. Even the fastest ships in the Union could not arrive in less than 18 days. The Ravagers would be done with their killing in 18 hours. Communications officer Ji-won refused to stop working. She was young for her position, barely past her species' coming of age. Her feline features and soft gray fur made her look gentle, but her determination was iron-strong. She sent signals on every frequency she could access. Military channels, commercial bands, even old emergency frequencies that nobody used anymore. Someone had to hear them. Someone had to help. The hours crawled past like wounded animals. Dae-hyun organized evacuation to the deepest shelters beneath the colony. Medical Director Kyung-soo prepared his hospital for the wounded that would surely come. The elderly amphibian moved with calm efficiency, his webbed hands sorting medical supplies and preparing surgical bays. He had seen war before on his homeworld. He knew what bombardment did to living bodies. Families huddled together in their homes. Parents held children and whispered lies about rescue coming soon. Teachers tried to keep students calm in underground classrooms. Engineers worked frantically to boost the shields even a few percentage points stronger. Everyone knew the truth, but nobody spoke it aloud. They were going to die on this remote moon far from their homeworlds. The Ravagers began their attack early. Probably for sport. Probably to spread more fear. Their weapons lit up the darkness of space with green fire. Energy beams hammered against the colony shields. Each impact sent shudders through the ground. Lights flickered in the buildings. Children screamed. The shields held, but everyone could see the power levels dropping on every display screen. Dae-hyun coordinated the defense with grim efficiency. The automated turrets fired back, their small projectiles bouncing harmlessly off the Ravager shields. It was like throwing pebbles at armored tanks, but he kept firing anyway. It gave the colonists hope. It gave them the illusion that they were fighting back. Sometimes illusions were all you had. Ji-won sat at her communications console, her pointed ears flat against her skull in concentration. She cycled through frequencies again and again, sending the same desperate message. Dawn's Edge colony under attack. 50,000 civilians, requesting immediate assistance. Her voice stayed steady even as the building shook from weapons impacts. Then her console picked up something strange, a signal, faint but definite, broadcasting on an old military frequency that her species had not used in decades. The signal was not Valoran. It was not any species she recognized. The language was unknown, but the signal pattern suggested acknowledgement. Someone heard them. Someone was responding. She ran to Governor Hyunwoo with the news. The governor stared at her console readings and shook his head. His hope had died hours ago. This was probably just cosmic interference, random radiation from a distant star mimicking a signal pattern. Even if it was real, even if someone heard them, nobody was close enough to help. The math was simple and cruel. No ship in the known galaxy could reach them before the deadline. No fleet could arrive in time to save them. The bombardment intensified. The Ravagers seemed to enjoy slowly crushing their prey. Shield power dropped to 40%, then 30%. Fires broke out in the surface structures despite the shields. The medical bay filled with colonists suffering from shock and injuries from falling debris. Kyung-soo moved between beds, his ancient hands still steady as he treated burns and broken bones. He whispered comfort in 6 different languages. With 6 hours remaining before the surrender deadline, the shields collapsed completely. The Ravager fleet moved closer, their weapons warming up for the final bombardment. Governor Hyun-woo prepared to transmit their surrender. Better slavery than death, especially for the children. At least slaves could hope for eventual freedom. The dead had no hope at all. He began recording the surrender message when every sensor in the colony suddenly screamed warnings. Something was tearing through space itself near the moon. A massive distortion appeared, reality bending and twisting as something enormous forced its way into normal space. The Ravagers stopped firing, their attention drawn to the impossible sight. The distortion grew larger, bright with energies that should not exist in normal space. Then a ship emerged. Not a Valoran ship, not a Ravager ship, something completely different. The vessel was enormous, easily 2.5 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was dark gray metal covered in scars from countless battles. Small symbols marked its side, each one representing a kill. Glowing blue lines ran across the hull like veins carrying power to weapon systems that bristled from every surface. The colony fell silent. Every colonist who could access a screen stared at the impossible warship. The Ravagers seemed equally stunned, their formation breaking as ships maneuvered for better views. Ji-won worked frantically at her console, trying to identify the vessel. Her database had no match. The ship design was unknown. The technology was unknown. Even the metal alloys were nothing her sensors recognized. Then the unknown ship broadcast a message. The language was translated automatically by the colony computers. A male voice, calm and firm, spoke words that nobody expected to hear. "This is Captain Jae-sung of the United Earth Space Navy vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call." The words hung in the air like a miracle nobody dared believe. The voice continued, now addressing the Ravagers. "You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you remain, we will interpret that as hostile intent. Earth. Human." Those words sparked recognition across the colony. Humans were myths in this sector. Stories told about an isolated species that fought a terrible war 3 decades ago, and then vanished behind their borders. Some species claimed humans were dangerous. Others said they were cowards hiding from the galaxy. Nobody really knew the truth. Until now. Until this moment when a human warship appeared when no help should have come. Governor Hyun-woo found his voice and whispered a single word that echoed what every colonist was thinking. Humans. The human warship hung in space like a sleeping predator. Captain Jae-sung sat in his command chair watching the tactical display. Gray streaks ran through his dark hair, earned from 20 years of military service. His face showed no emotion as he studied the 6 Ravager warships. He had seen worse odds before. Not many, but some. Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin stood at the tactical station, her fingers dancing across controls. She was young compared to the captain, barely 30, but combat had aged her eyes. She looked at the Ravager formation and smiled without humor. 6 against 1. The Ravagers probably thought they had an advantage. They would learn differently soon enough. The Indomitable had been on routine patrol near human space when they picked up the distress signal. Old military frequencies that most species had abandoned decades ago. But humans never forgot anything. Their ships still monitored those old channels because you never knew when someone might need help. Captain Jae-sung made the decision instantly. They were 3 days away at maximum speed. They covered it in 2. Commander Tae-yang called from engineering. The jump drive was overheated from pushing too hard. They would need 6 hours to cool it down before they could leave the system. The captain acknowledged the report without concern. They would not be leaving in 6 hours anyway. This fight would be finished one way or another long before then. On the colony, Communications Officer Ji-won established a direct channel to the human ship. Her voice shook as she spoke. She thanked them for coming. She explained about the 50,000 civilians. She warned them about the Ravager weapons and shields. Captain Jae-sung listened patiently to everything she said. Then he assured her in a calm voice that everything would be fine. They had dealt with pirates before. The Ravager commander finally responded to the human ultimatum. His reptilian laugh echoed across all frequencies. 1 ship against 6. 1 human ship against the might of the Ravager horde. He called Captain Jae-sung a fool. He promised to add the human ship to his collection of kills. He bragged about the advanced technology his fleet had stolen from a dozen conquered species. Then he ordered his ships to open fire on the Indomitable. Green energy beams lanced through space. Missiles launched from Ravager tubes, their engines burning bright. The weapons converged on the human warship from multiple angles. It was enough firepower to destroy most capital ships. The colonists watching from Dawn's Edge held their breath. They had hoped for a miracle, but expected to watch their rescuers die. The Indomitable's shields absorbed the impacts without even flickering. The energy beams splashed across the defensive barrier like water hitting stone. The missiles exploded against the shields, creating beautiful but harmless fireballs. When the light cleared, the human ship remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. The Ravagers stopped firing, confused by their weapons' total failure. Captain Jae-sung leaned forward in his command chair. His voice remained calm but now carried an edge of cold steel. He thanked the Ravagers for making their hostile intent clear. He informed them they had chosen poorly. Then he gave the order his crew had been waiting for. All weapons free. Show them why humanity does not back down. The Indomitable opened fire. Railguns along its spine launched solid metal projectiles at speeds that approached a fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the space between ships in seconds. They hit Ravager shields with kinetic energy that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. 2 Ravager shields collapsed instantly. The projectiles continued through armor plating, through internal decks, through the ships themselves before exploding out the far side. Missile pods opened along the Indomitable's flanks. Hundreds of smart missiles launched in coordinated swarms. They wove through space in patterns too complex for Ravager point defense systems to track. The missiles found weak points in shields, gaps in armor, vulnerable systems. Explosions blossomed across 3 Ravager ships. One of them began venting atmosphere and spinning out of control. Energy weapons added their fire to the devastating barrage. Blue beams of concentrated power sliced through Ravager armor like a hot knife through butter. The weapons were more advanced than anything the Ravagers had ever seen. Their stolen technology meant nothing against equipment designed by humans who had fought wars for thousands of years. In the colony control room, Governor Hyun-woo watched the impossible unfold. 1 human ship was tearing through 6 Ravager warships like they were made of paper. Security Chief Dae-hyun stared at his tactical display, his compound eyes trying to process what they were seeing. Those combat maneuvers, those weapon combinations, that level of coordinated firepower, this was not just superior technology. This was centuries of military doctrine refined to perfection. The Ravagers tried to regroup. The 4 ships that could still maneuver formed a new formation and concentrated their fire on the Indomitable. This time they focused everything on a single point, trying to overwhelm the human shields through sheer sustained power. Green beams converged. Missiles flew in waves. Plasma torpedoes traced burning paths through space. The Indomitable took the hits. Its shields flared bright under the sustained bombardment. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship. Shield strength dropped to 80%, then 70%. Commander Tae-yang rerouted power from non-essential systems, trying to reinforce the shields. Damage control teams stood ready to respond to any breaches. Lieutenant Commander Hye-jin watched her displays and calculated angles. The Ravagers thought they were winning now. They thought sustained fire would break through. They were wrong. She looked at Captain Jae-sung and made a recommendation. Time for the hammer drop. The captain nodded once. Execute. The Indomitable fired emergency maneuvering thrusters. The massive warship flipped end over end while maintaining its forward momentum. Physics said this should not be possible for something so large. Human engineering said otherwise. The ship completed its rotation in seconds, bringing fresh weapon batteries to bear on the shocked Ravager fleet. New railgun batteries opened fire. These shots were different, larger, more powerful. The projectiles glowed from the heat of their acceleration. They struck Ravager ships with even more devastating force. One shot went completely through a Ravager warship, through the ship behind it, and continued into deep space. The first ship exploded from secondary detonations. The second began breaking apart. Captain Jae-sung ordered deployment of MAC cannons, magnetic accelerator cannons, the main weapons of human capital ships. The crew had nicknamed them Godhammers. Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin targeted the largest Ravager ship and fired. The tungsten slug launched from the Indomitable at 40% of light speed. It crossed the distance between ships in less time than a human heartbeat. The impact vaporized the entire midsection of the Ravager warship. Metal turned to plasma. Armor became gas. The front and rear sections of the ship drifted apart, their connection simply gone. Explosions rippled through both pieces as systems failed and reactors lost containment. 3,000 Ravager crew died before they even knew they were hit. The remaining 3 Ravager ships broke formation and scattered. Their commander's arrogant voice was gone, replaced by panicked orders. They had never faced an opponent like this. Their stolen technology was useless. Their numbers meant nothing. One human ship was destroying their entire fleet and making it look easy, but the Ravagers were not completely helpless. They had survived this long by being cunning. While the Indomitable focused on the fleeing ships, the damaged vessels that had been left drifting suddenly fired their remaining weapons. Missiles and energy beams struck the human ship from unexpected angles. The attack was desperate but effective. Shields failed in multiple sections. Several missiles penetrated the defensive screen and struck the hull directly. Armor plating ablated away under energy weapon impacts. Red lights flashed across the Indomitable's bridge. Commander Taeyang reported critical damage to the port engine cluster. Shield generators on that side were offline. The ship could still fight, but it was wounded now. Major Dongha contacted the bridge from the Marine Bay. His soldiers were ready. If the Ravagers wanted a boarding action, the Marines would show them what human soldiers could do in close combat. Captain Jae-sung noted the offer, but ordered the Marines to stand by. This fight would be finished at range. The Indomitable pivoted to target the damaged but still fighting Ravager ships. One more MAC round ended the threat permanently. The remaining 2 Ravagers tried to flee, their engines burning at maximum power, but they had made a mistake. They ran directly toward the colony's moon, toward the magnetic field, toward terrain they did not understand. Captain Jae-sung smiled without humor. The Ravagers had just trapped themselves. He ordered pursuit but not destruction. Not yet. Let them get closer to the moon. Let them think they might escape into the magnetic interference and lose the human ship. Let them have hope for just a moment longer. Then take it away. On the colony, Ji-won broadcast updates to the terrified civilians. The human ship was damaged but fighting. 4 Ravager ships were destroyed. 2 were fleeing. Hope, impossible hope, began to grow in hearts that had given up. Children stopped crying. Parents dared to believe they might see tomorrow. 10 fresh Ravager warships formed a battle line between the damaged Indomitable and any escape route. Warlord Krev commanded this fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel twice the size of the other Ravager ships. His reptilian face filled the communication screens as he broadcast his message. He praised the human captain for a brave fight. Then he promised to tear the Indomitable apart piece by piece. On the Indomitable's bridge, damage reports scrolled across every screen. Commander Taeyang listed the problems in his usual calm voice. Port shields at 15%. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. Port engine cluster operating at 40% capacity. Ammunition reserves at 38%. The ship had given everything in the first fight. Now they faced an enemy 3 times stronger. Captain Jae-sung looked at each of his senior officers. Lieutenant Commander Hae-jin met his eyes with fierce determination. She wanted to fight. Commander Taeyang gave a slight nod. The ship could still fight even if she could not run. Major Dongha appeared on the screen from the Marine Bay. His soldiers stood ready behind him, weapons loaded and armor sealed. Whatever happened next, the crew of the Indomitable would face it together. The captain opened a channel to the colony. Governor Hyunwoo appeared, his forearms trembling, his blue scales pale with fear. He begged the humans to run while they still could. They had done enough. They had tried. Nobody would blame them for saving themselves. Captain Jae-sung listened politely. Then he explained something the governor needed to understand. Humans did not come to help and then run when things got difficult. They came because civilians needed protection. That had not changed. The odds had not changed what was right. He thanked the governor for his concern, assured him the Indomitable would continue fighting, and closed the channel before the governor could argue further. There were battles to plan. Lieutenant Commander He Jin spread tactical options across the main display. Every simulation showed the same result. The Indomitable could not win through direct confrontation. But humans had not conquered half a galaxy by only fighting battles they could win. She proposed using the moon's terrain to their advantage. The magnetic fields, the debris ring, the gravity well, turned the environment into a weapon. Captain Jae Sung approved the plan. The Indomitable moved toward the moon, using emergency thrusters to maneuver despite damaged engines. The Ravager fleet followed, confident in their numbers. They formed a loose net, planning to surround the human ship and destroy it from all sides. Warlord Krev laughed as he watched his prey try to escape into terrain that would only trap them more completely. The Indomitable entered the moon's debris ring. Chunks of rock and ice that ranged from pebbles to small asteroids filled the space around the moon. Ravager sensors struggled to track the human ship through all the interference. Their weapons had trouble locking onto a target hidden among thousands of radar returns. The Indomitable used this confusion to position itself carefully. Then the human ship launched small objects into the debris field, hundreds of them, each no larger than a cargo container. They drifted among the rocks and ice, powered down to minimal energy signatures. The Ravagers barely noticed them. Just more debris from a damaged ship. Just more junk floating in space. They focused on finding the Indomitable itself. The Ravager fleet split into two groups. One moved above the debris ring. One moved below. They would catch the human ship between them and end this fight. 6 ships above, 4 ships below. All of them undamaged and ready for battle. Warlord Krev positioned his flagship in the upper group, where he could watch his victory unfold. The Indomitable suddenly appeared from behind a large asteroid. Its remaining weapons opened fire at the lower group of Ravager ships. Mac rounds and missiles struck before the Ravagers could react. One ship lost its main engines. Another took a Mac round through its bridge. But the human ship was exposed now. Both Ravager groups converged on its position, weapons ready to fire. Commander Tae Yang activated the objects they had deployed. Nova mines. Each one was a small fusion device wrapped in smart guidance systems. They had been drifting in the debris field, waiting for targets to get close. Now they woke up. Their engines ignited. Hundreds of fusion bombs accelerated toward the Ravager ships from every direction. The Ravagers tried to shoot down the mines, but there were too many coming from too many angles. Point defense systems burned out from overuse. Shields absorbed some impacts but could not stop them all. Then the first mine reached a Ravager ship and detonated. Fusion fire consumed the vessel in an instant. Metal vaporized. Crew died without even time to scream. More mines struck. More explosions blossomed in the debris ring. The fusion detonations created miniature suns that burned for seconds before fading. 3 Ravager ships simply ceased to exist. 2 more were crippled beyond any hope of repair. The survivors scattered in panic, their tight formation breaking apart as each captain tried to save their own ship. But the Indomitable paid a price for this victory. A Ravager missile penetrated the weakened shields before the mines detonated. It struck the medical bay directly. The explosion tore through 3 decks. 47 crew members died instantly. Medical personnel, engineers, Marines waiting for deployment. Captain Jae Sung heard the casualty reports and his jaw tightened. More names to remember, more families to write letters to. Commander Tai Yang reported from engineering. The reactor containment was failing. They had maybe 10 minutes before they had to shut down the main reactor completely. Without reactor power, they would lose weapons, shields, and engines. The Indomitable would become a drifting hulk waiting to be destroyed. They needed to end this fight in the next few minutes or not at all. 5 Ravager ships remained operational. 4 were damaged and fleeing, but Warlord Krev's flagship was still intact and dangerous. The massive vessel emerged from the debris ring and fired everything it had at the Indomitable. Energy beams, missiles, plasma torpedoes. The human ship's shields collapsed completely. Armor plating cracked under the sustained bombardment. Internal explosions rocked the vessel as systems failed. On the colony, Communications Officer Ji-won watched through tears. The human ship was dying. These strangers who came to save them were being torn apart. Security Chief Dae-hyun looked at his defense grid. The colony's mining lasers, industrial cutting tools meant for rock, not combat. But they were something. He contacted Ji-won with an idea that was probably stupid, but was better than doing nothing. Jiwan contacted the Indomitable and explained quickly. The colony had mining lasers. They could target the Ravager ships. It would not do much damage, but it might distract them. Lieutenant Commander He Jin heard the offer and almost laughed. Mining lasers against military warships. It was ridiculous. It might also work. She accepted immediately and sent targeting coordinates. The colony's lasers fired. Bright blue beams lanced up from the moon's surface toward the Ravager ships. The lasers were designed to cut through solid rock. Against military shields, they were nearly useless. But nearly useless was not completely useless. The beams struck Ravager shields from unexpected angles. They forced the Ravagers to split their attention between the dying human ship and this new annoyance from the colony. Governor Hyunwoo broadcast to every colonist. The humans were dying to protect them. The absolute least they could do was help. Engineers abandoned their shelters to operate the mining lasers. Miners who understood the equipment guided the beams. Civilians spotted targets and called coordinates. The entire colony became part of the battle. The distraction gave the Indomitable precious seconds. Lieutenant Commander He Jin targeted Warlord Krev's flagship with their last Mac round. The tungsten slug launched with every bit of power Commander Taeyang could squeeze from the failing reactors. It crossed the distance between ships and struck the Ravager flagship directly on its main reactor housing. The flagship's shields had been focused on defending against the mining lasers from below. The Mac round hit the weak upper shields and punched through like they were not there. The tungsten slug penetrated the armor plating, smashed through internal structures, and struck the reactor core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship exploded from the inside out. The explosion was massive. Warlord Krev died along with his entire command crew. The flagship broke into 3 large pieces that tumbled through space, trailing fire and bodies. The 4 remaining damaged Ravager ships saw their leader die and made their choice. They ran. Their engines burned at maximum as they fled toward the edge of the system and the safety of faster-than-light travel. Captain Jae-sung wanted to pursue, but Commander Tae-yang made it clear the ship could not. The reactor was shutting down. Life support was failing. Weapons were offline. The Indomitable had won the battle, but the ship was critically damaged. They needed repairs before they could do anything else. The captain gave the order to stand down. Then sensors detected new spatial distortions, more ships dropping out of faster than light. The crew prepared for another fight even though they had nothing left to fight with. But these were not Ravager ships. The sensor profiles matched human vessels. An entire Earth battle group emerged from the distortions. 5 warships led by a massive flagship. Help had finally arrived. The human battle group moved with precision that spoke of years training together. Admiral Yansu's flagship, the UESN Retribution, was even larger than the Indomitable. 3 kilometers of weapons and armor that had seen action in a dozen star systems. The other 4 ships in her fleet were smaller but no less deadly. They spread out in a formation that blocked every escape route the fleeing Ravagers might take. The 4 damaged Ravager ships tried to run anyway. Their engines burned bright as they pushed toward the edge of the system. They needed to reach minimum safe distance for faster-than-light travel. Just a few more minutes and they could escape. They broadcast surrender offers. They promised information about Ravager bases and slave markets. They begged for mercy that they had never shown to any of their victims. Admiral Yansu listened to their pleas with a face like carved stone. She had reviewed the Indomitable's combat logs during the journey here. She knew about the civilian colony under siege. She knew about the Ravager ultimatum to surrender or die. She knew these same Ravagers had destroyed dozens of peaceful settlements across this sector. Her response was cold and final. Request denied. The battle group opened fire. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Missiles from 5 human warships converged on the fleeing Ravagers from multiple vectors. Mac rounds fired at precise intervals. Each shot calculated to hit a critical system. Energy weapons sliced through damaged armor like surgical instruments. The Ravager ships tried to fight back, but they were already crippled from their earlier battle with the Indomitable. One Ravager ship exploded when a Mac round struck its reactor. Another lost all power and tumbled through space as life support failed. The 3rd ship tried to surrender by shutting down all systems, but Admiral Yansu had made her decision. Pirates who murdered civilians did not get trials. They got justice. A spread of missiles ended that ship permanently. The last Ravager ship actually managed to jump to faster-than-light travel. Its damaged engines tore themselves apart from the stress, but the ship vanished into the dimensional tunnels that connected star systems. It would probably not survive the journey. Even if it did, word would spread. The Ravager horde had picked a fight with humanity and been destroyed in a single day. That message would reach every pirate and slaver in the sector. With the battle over, the human ships turned their attention to rescue and recovery. Medical vessels detached from the larger warships and moved toward both the Indomitable and the colony. Admiral Yonsu contacted Captain Jae-sung directly. Her stern expression softened slightly as she looked at his tired face on her screen. She told him he had done well. He had held impossible odds until help arrived. That was all she could have asked. Captain Jae-sung acknowledged the praise, but his mind was on his crew. 47 dead, 103 wounded. The medical bay destroyed. Commander Tae-yang reported the final damage assessment. Multiple hull breaches, both port engines offline. The main reactor in emergency shutdown, life support running on backups. The Indomitable would need weeks in a shipyard before she could fight again. Dr. So-yeon led the medical team from the Retribution to the damaged sections of the Indomitable. She was a trauma surgeon who had served in the last major human war. Her hands moved with calm efficiency as she assessed casualties and organized treatment. The wounded were stabilized and transferred to the Retribution's medical facilities. The dead were treated with honor and prepared for transport home. On the colony, Governor Hyun-woo stood at the landing pad as human rescue teams descended from orbit. He had prepared a speech thanking them for their help. The words felt inadequate. How do you thank someone for saving 50,000 lives? How do you express gratitude for strangers who risked everything when they had no obligation to help? The first human soldier to step off the transport was Major Dong-ha. His powered armor was scarred from previous battles but functioning perfectly. Behind him came Marines carrying medical supplies and engineering equipment. They moved with professional efficiency, immediately beginning to assess damage and help with repairs. Major Dong-ha approached the governor and removed his helmet. Hyun-woo began his prepared speech, but Major Dong-ha gently interrupted. There was no need for thanks. They had only done what was necessary. The major explained that his teams would help repair critical infrastructure and provide medical assistance. Then they would leave. Humans did not occupy or demand tribute. They helped and moved on. That was the human way. Communications Officer Ji-won met the human communications specialist, a young woman named Hye-jin, who shared the same name as the Indomitable's tactical officer. The two of them worked together to restore the colony's damaged transmitters. Ji-won asked questions about human technology and culture. Hye-jin answered between repairs, explaining that humanity had learned hard lessons from their own violent history. Humans knew what it was like to be victims of stronger opponents. They knew the terror of facing extinction. They knew the helplessness of calling for aid that never came. That was why they monitored old frequencies. That was why they responded to distress calls even from species they had never met, because they remembered what it felt like when nobody helped them. Security Chief Dae-hyun found himself working alongside human engineers to repair the colony's defense grid. He watched them work with technology far more advanced than anything the Velaran Union possessed. Yet they were willing to help a primitive colony repair basic systems. He asked one engineer why humans stayed isolated if they were this powerful. The engineer's answer was simple and disturbing. Humans stayed behind their borders because they knew what they were capable of. They had spent thousands of years fighting each other in wars that killed billions. They had created weapons that could destroy planets. They had fought with such fury that they almost exterminated themselves multiple times. When they finally achieved peace among themselves, they decided isolation was safer for everyone. The engineer explained that humans were not peaceful by nature. They were warriors who chose to control their violent instincts. But when innocence needed protection, when the weak faced predators, humans remembered why those instincts existed. The Ravagers threatened civilians. That made them targets. Humanity showed them what happened to those who preyed on the helpless medical. Director Kyung-soo worked in his hospital alongside Dr. So-yeon. The human doctor treated both colonists and captured Ravager crew with the same professional care. Kyung-soo noticed this and asked about it. Dr. So-yeon explained that medical oaths transcended species. The Ravagers would face justice for their crimes, but wounded enemies still deserved medical treatment. Humans could be ruthless warriors and compassionate healers. Both were necessary. Word of the battle spread across the Valoran Union through official channels and unofficial networks. A single human warship had held off 6 Ravager vessels long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Then a human battle group had eliminated the rest of the Ravager horde in less than an hour. Species that had considered humans primitive isolationists suddenly reconsidered their assumptions. The Valoran Union Council sent an official delegation to Dawn's Edge to thank humanity personally. They arrived 3 days after the battle to find human teams still helping with repairs. The delegation met with Admiral Yan-Su and Captain Jae-sung aboard the Retribution. The council offered an alliance, trade agreements, technology exchanges, whatever humanity wanted in return for their protection. Admiral Yan-Su listened politely to all the offers. Then she explained that humanity did not want payment. They had not come for reward or glory. They came because civilians needed help and nobody else could reach them in time. However, if the Valoran Union wanted to establish diplomatic relations, Earth would welcome that. Perhaps coordinate defense of this sector to prevent future Ravager attacks. The council representatives were confused by this. They offered wealth and technology, but humans only wanted friendship and cooperation. This was not how powerful species usually behaved. Admiral Yan-Su explained that humans measured wealth differently. They had plenty of resources. What they valued was the chance to be part of something larger than themselves, a community of species working together to protect each other. After 2 weeks, the repairs to both the Indomitable and the colony were complete enough for the human fleet to depart. A ceremony was held at the colony to honor the 47 human crew members who died defending strangers. Governor Hyunwoo dedicated a memorial with all their names inscribed in both English and Valoran script. The inscription read simply, "They came when none would come." Captain Jae-sung spoke at the ceremony. He told the colonists that his crew had not died in vain. They died doing what they swore to do, protecting those who could not protect themselves. He asked the colonists to remember them not with sadness, but with the determination to build a safer galaxy. The best memorial was to ensure no other colony faced what Dawn's Edge had faced. The human fleet prepared to leave. The Indomitable could not jump to faster than light yet, so the other warships would escort her to the nearest human shipyard. Before departing, Captain Jae-sung sent a final message to the colony. He thanked them for fighting alongside the Indomitable with their mining lasers. Their courage had made a difference.